November 22nd, 1967, 9:03 a.m., the Pentagon. The briefing room air is stale, metallic. Fluorescent lights hum. A map of South Vietnam hangs on the wall, crowded with colored pins and grease pencil lines. Red arrows push east, blue zones spread like stains. A general clears his throat. "We are making steady progress." Cameras click. Pens hover. At the podium, the officer speaks calmly. Enemy body counts are up. Friendly zones expanding. The Viet Cong are losing coherence. The war, according to numbers, bends toward victory. You can feel the relief. For years, Americans have heard the same thing. One more push. One more year. Light at the end of the tunnel. Irreversible momentum. Outside, young men board aircraft for Da Nang. Inside, the war is already won. On paper. The general taps the map. This was contested ground 12 months ago. No one asks how many villages that color represents. No one asks how many blue zones turn red after nightfall. The briefing ends. Smiles. Cameras leave. The illusion holds. 2 floors below, a different conversation unfolds. The door is closed. Ashtray full. Papers marked confidential spread across the table. An analyst rubs his eyes. He rereads the same paragraph, hoping the meaning will change. It doesn't. Enemy losses are higher than ever. Recruitment higher still. Units reported destroyed reappear weeks later under different names. Pacification programs collapse when US forces rotate out. He writes, "Metrics do not reflect operational reality. The war is not progressing. It is recycling itself." This is the split defining Vietnam. Public war and private war. In public, victory lives in charts. In private, it's questioned by men who no longer trust the numbers they created. Body counts, once crude indicators, became traps. Commanders face pressure to show results. Promotions flow through statistics. Higher kill numbers earn rewards. But the enemy doesn't fight the way metrics demand. A dead guerrilla doesn't weaken a movement built on replacement. Numbers rise, but the war doesn't end. Every week the same briefings are delivered. In Saigon, officers gather around glowing boards. Districts flip from yellow to green. Success is reported. Paperwork moves on. Outside the wire, the same roads are mined again. A captain reports the area secure. That night, the school teacher is executed for cooperating. The report never mentions him. By 1967, the contradiction is obvious. Officials receive briefings contradicting public statements. Intelligence warns enemy strength isn't collapsing. One internal report uses the word stalemate. Another, illusion. But these documents stay classified. To acknowledge them means admitting years of sacrifice produced no promised results. That admission feels more dangerous than continuing the lie. The people delivering optimistic briefings aren't fools. Many know the truth. But the system rewards certainty, not doubt. A skeptical general risks being labeled defeatist. So the war is described in language leaders think the public can endure. Progress, momentum, resolve. Anything but uncertainty. In living rooms, families watch news. Maps appear, simplified, reassuring. Parents tell themselves their sons fight for something working. They need to believe that. Then, early 1968, the illusion cracks. Not with documents, not leaks, but something louder, something visible, something impossible to explain with charts. Because soon, the enemy everyone's been told is collapsing will strike, not at the edges, but at the center. And the gap between what Americans were told and what was happening will become impossible to ignore.
The illusion didn't collapse all at once. It thinned, stretched, began to tear at the edges. In Saigon, reports arrived every morning, typed pages still warm from the machine, stamped secret, slid into folders, stacked higher each week. Enemy casualties climbed. Operations were logged as successes. Provinces were shaded blue, then greener still. On the surface, the war looked measurable, manageable. But when analysts laid the reports side by side, a pattern emerged that no chart could hide. The same enemy unit names kept reappearing. The same villages were cleared again and again. A battalion destroyed in March showed up in July under a different designation. Fighters killed in one province were replaced by recruits from another. Losses were absorbed, not felt. Advisors in the field felt the contradiction before anyone else. A patrol would move through a hamlet at dawn. No resistance, no shots fired. Villagers nodded politely. The area was declared secure. That night, the same villagers paid taxes to the Viet Cong. By morning, the mines were back on the road. The enemy hadn't retreated. They had waited. Nothing stayed won. Inside secure rooms, civilian analysts compared intelligence estimates with operational claims. The language grew cautious, then blunt. Words like progress quietly disappeared, replaced by phrases like static conditions and enemy resilience. One memo warned that body counts were, at best, misleading. Another questioned whether victory had ever been clearly defined. These documents never reached the cameras. Public briefings remained confident because they had to be. To admit doubt meant admitting that years of escalation had not produced results, that tens of thousands of lives had purchased time, not resolution. And time, the reports warned, favored the enemy. Then came January 1968, Tet. The attacks did not win the war militarily. They didn't need to. They reached cities Americans had been told were safe. They reached television screens. They reached living rooms. The shock wasn't about tactics. It was about trust. If the enemy was collapsing, how could this happen? If victory was near, why did the war still look endless? The answer had existed for years, in reports marked classified, in quiet offices, in doubts never spoken aloud. After Tet, the numbers lost their power. Maps stopped persuading. Official language sounded rehearsed, fragile. The gap between promise and reality finally closed, not with a memo, but with undeniable proof. The illusion was gone, and once it vanished, it could never be rebuilt.